What is up, TFA Fam? Thank you for checking out the Fantasy Authority again. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about the zero wide receiver draft strategy. Is it viable this year? Is that something you should be doing? And how will that play out in your 2020 drafts? Let's get to the show. What is going on, everybody? Hope you are doing well. If you're watching, please hit that subscribe button. Let us know if you are going zero wide receiver, who is the first guy you're going to be taking off of draft boards. Let us know that. Drop that in the comments, and let's get some discussion going. Kev, with running backs flying up the board, obviously this is going to come down to your draft spot, right? I think that goes without saying. Like if you're sitting at the back end, that makes a difference as opposed to if you're sitting at 101 in terms of who you're going with. With the running backs flying up the board, is that making you think about taking this zero wide receiver strategy a little more seriously, or are you going to be zigging when other people are zagging?
It's a really good question, because I feel like that we are overvaluing the running back position now, but I think most people are going to be big proponents of the zero wide receiver draft strategy or robust running back, whichever way you want to look at it. And I do think it's going to be a little bit of a mistake, because a lot of people tend to be victims of the moment and get caught in recency bias of what we just came off of, right? Where last year, everybody that was against zero RB strategy or robust running back or robust wide receiver strategy, they're going to be, nuts on the table. I told you dumbasses, don't use that strategy. It's awful. It doesn't work, blah, 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 right? But last year was more of an outlier than it was anything. We've been seeing a little bit more of the ability to be able to do this, be able to take, the two running backs early or three running backs early, kind of, because we keep hearing the wide receiver position is really deep, right? And while it is deep, there's still a huge difference between that 6th round wide receiver and getting Devontae Adams or getting Julio Jones. Guys like that, guys that are going to be the consistent producers most every single week, right? Guys are going to be giving you 18, 19 fantasy points per game versus the guys who are going to be giving you 13 fantasy points per game. Now, the proponents for fading the wide receiver position early are mainly because you want to grab those running backs, because they're going to be flying off the draft board. So who are you going to be left with whenever your time comes to draft? That's number one. Because if you are in the league and running backs are just flying off the board, and like you said, through the first 4 rounds, there are 26 running backs being taken, which is ridiculous to me. I mean, you're into the RB3 territory by the 4th round, which is disgusting to me. I feel like that there's going to be a lot of landmines. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be upset, because I don't think because typically the average running back only plays 14 games every single year. We did not see that last year. Over 66% of running backs met value last year, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's insane. I think most years it's usually in that 50% range. So it was a major outlier for what we typically see. So with all that being said, if you want to run the zero wide receiver, understand that you are doing the same thing that everybody else is, and you are fighting people for that. So you are essentially going to be drafting players that are going to be overvalued. I still think that for me, like, I am a much bigger proponent of going robust wide receiver. We've already talked about, go check out the zero RB robust wide receiver strategy that we talked about, that'll be coming out as well. So check that out as well. But I am much more of a plan on. But if you go this way, like I said, you have to know that you are getting yourself into a situation where you are fighting and you are losing value on these players, because you are probably overdrafting them to get your hands on them. If, like you said, if you have the first 4 picks of a draft, if you have the ability to get Saquon, CMC, Zeke, Kamara, Cook, those guys, do you, boo-boo? Like, do you? Like, you definitely are taking those guys. Like, I am not talking you out of taking those players. Those guys are viable. But once you get past those players, I can tell you all day why I can poke holes in Nick Chubb. I can poke holes in Joe Mixon. I can poke holes in even somebody like Miles Sanders, who I absolutely love. Joe Mixon. All these guys have their warts and all have their red flags. It's really hard to poke a hole in Michael Thomas. It's really hard to poke a hole in Devontae Adams. And so my point is, yes, you should try to get a running back within the first 3 or 4 rounds, 100%. But you do not have to start your draft like most people tell you. Most of the traditional fantasy analysts will tell you, you got to take a running back with your first 2 or 3 picks or you're an idiot. No, get the fuck out of here with that. I cannot stand that logic and that mindset. You do not have to do that. And to be honest with you, I think it's a terrible year to do that.
Dude, I love the little accent there. Like, it started off like a little Donald Trump, then it went to like a California surfer, then it came back down to redneck. Like, you showed some range there, man. I'm very impressed. That was
you are welcome.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're also saying that wide receiver is so deep this year is because of how much running backs are being pushed up. Now, are there more options just in terms of who you'd feel best about and who you'd feel good about drafting as your wide receiver 1 in, like, let's say the wide receiver 18 range? Absolutely. But like I said, one of the reasons why it's so deep, quote unquote, is because there are 26 running backs being drafted in the first 4 rounds, which is absolutely crazy. But that does give some credence to this strategy and why you can just slam 3 of your first 4 picks being running back, because there are so many options because of everyone passing on wide receiver. So if let's just say, and you shouldn't do this, but let's say that you went into a draft and you just decided, all right, I'm going 0 wide receiver. What round would you be popping the top on that? Would it be the same thing as the 0 RB approach, where you're looking at round 5, round 6, or would you be, like I said, maybe like after the first 3 rounds? When would you want to be grabbing your first wide receiver if you were going with this strategy?
Well, I definitely agree. The first thing you said is you should never, ever, ever, ever go into a draft with some sort of strategy that you have in mind that you want to run. You let the board
Correct.
Come to you, and you play it as it lies, right? But if everything worked out, and the let's say I took, I don't know, Miles Sanders. Let's say I got Miles Sanders, Joe Mixon, and Austin Eckler are my first 3 running backs, or something crazy like that. That's probably not going to happen, but just throwing it out there, whatever. I would probably start looking around round 4 to start taking a wide receiver.
Okay.
Some of those guys, I mean, that are still there in the 4th round. You have DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, Robert Woods, DK Metcalf. Keenan Allen is going in the 5th round. DJ Chark is going in the 5th round. Cortland Sutton is going wide receiver 24. Like, give me all of that. Like, I will take that all day. It's crazy because you look at some of these guys, and like a lot of these like wide receivers that we were just talking about last week on our ranking show that we have as like top 15 wide receivers are going pretty late, right? I mean, even DK Metcalf is going, who you have as a top 9, is going, 410, wide receiver 19. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing to look at here too is you can get a wide receiver 1 for the NFL team, right? You can get their wide receiver 1 late in these drafts. I mean, if you want to wait until the 5th round, Terry McLaurin going at 509, and we all saw what he did last year. Does Dwayne Haskins leave a little to be desired? Sure, but who else are they going to be targeting there? Whether, like, are they going to be the greatest targets? Are they Drew Brees targets? Absolutely not. But if he gets 130, 140 targets at 509 wide receiver 24, or 509 wide receiver 25, rather, he has the same ADP as Cortland Sutton. Like, give me that all day. And then if you want to start swinging for the fences like you're going to do in your 0 RB strategies, you're looking at Marquis Brown going at 603, guys like that. Brandon Cooks at 702. We all know all the question marks that are floating around with the Houston Texans wide receiver group. Like, if Brandon Cooks is somehow able to avoid any long-term absence, and let's say, crazy, this is going to sound crazy, but just what if Will Fuller gets injured again? I know. Calm down, Cody. It's crazy. That's not going to happen. But if Will Fuller does get injured and Brandon Cooks avoids any long-term absences with his concussion history, you could be looking at Brandon Cooks being the top guy attached to Deshaun Watson that you're getting at the beginning of the 7th round. Like, give me that all day. And then depending on the flavor you want to go with, there are some safer guys you can target, like Tyler Boyd. Kev, I know you're lower on him, and this is kind of the range that you have him. But Tyler Boyd at 805 at wide receiver 36. Like, would I feel great about him as my wide receiver one? Not necessarily, but if for some reason you wait 8 rounds to grab someone, you can do much worse than Tyler Boyd coming off, like I said, 805 at wide receiver 36. So
Marvin Jones going in the 9th round.
Yeah, like this is crazy, and this is why, like, if you really wanted to just pigeonhole yourself into one of these two strategies in terms of 0 RB or 0 wide receiver, like, I think 0 wide receiver is much more viable because of like these names that we're throwing out, like Christian Kirk. He's going to be wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 for Arizona in a pass heavy offense. You can get him in the 10th round. He is going as wide receiver 46 at 10-10, a couple picks after Jamison Crowder, a couple picks right before Deshaun Jackson. Like, that is crazy. Anthony Miller, wide receiver 50 at the end of the 11th round. Like, there are so many options. Like, that if I'm going to pigeonhole, like I said, if I'm going to pigeonhole myself into one of these, it is going to be 0 wide receiver because of the depth. Once you get past the top 26 that you said are going in the first 4 rounds for running backs, it gets ugly, and you need help with some of those guys. Like, you don't necessarily need help with Christian Kirk in the 10th round in order for him to pay back value on where you're drafting him. So, Kev, do you have similar thoughts? Or, like, obviously, like we said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You want to be fluid. You just want to basically, it sounds stupid to say, but take the best available player. Like, that's really what you should be doing. It sounds simple, it sounds stupid, but in reality, that's what it comes down to, is picking the best value for your draft, and also looking at how the other teams in your league are being constructed too. I think that's something that kind of goes a little unnoticed. If you're, you should also be paying attention to how the other teams in your league are building their rosters. But what are your overall thoughts with everything I kind of just laid out there?
I get it, right? On paper, everything looks like it's so much easier because you're right. Because you mentioned we're seeing running backs go at a much earlier pace. Wide receivers are still there, and there's a lot of these names that we really like that are going later. So it looks like it's a much easier haul to be able to do this. And while I do typically agree, the biggest issue that really remains for me is if you were wanting to do that, is there are a lot of volatility once you get into the running back position of, even the RB2s. Like, there are a ton of red flag guys there that you're going to be taking there, where I would much rather probably go wide receiver. But if it fell to the way that the guys that I really like were there and I got them at a good value, I really wouldn't have a problem going 0 wide receiver, because of the fact that, like, there is a lot of wide receivers there that I do feel pretty good about that have a pretty high ceiling. Now we are in July, so we'll see how things kind of progress, and if we see some of these running backs start to fall to back a little bit, where things start to shake themselves out a little bit. I know today there was, or it might have been yesterday, a report about Damien Williams, where the Chiefs front office again reiterates that Damien Williams is going to have a big role in this offense this year and is the starter. And of course, that brings in all the skeptical people of, oh my God, yeah, right, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, shut up. Like, and I'm like, I've been saying it this entire time, and I'm not trying to get into this whole other conversation, but, like, I've been saying it the whole time, and I think that Damien Williams is going to have a bigger role than people think he's going to have, and people are going to be a little upset whenever the season comes around, because, like, I saw, like, today in, like, the Scott Fish Bowl, like, in my draft, like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went in the 2nd round, like, early 2nd, and I'm like, that's ridiculous, okay? Like, that is ridiculous. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets the same fate as, like, Kareem Hunt and goes off. Very well could be, but I'm not putting my eggs in that basket. But regardless of that, my biggest point is we'll wait and see how things sort of shake out. We'll start to get more information. It's gonna be wild times now, because we may not have any preseason, and we're all gonna get is training camp, and we're not gonna have great coverage of training camp because they're not gonna be allowing all these people in here to view this stuff. So we're really gonna have a very small lens to judge some of this stuff from. We could probably do an entire podcast or entire show, which we probably should, because nobody really is of how we should navigate this with coronavirus and how everything changes. Because I think it would be a really interesting thing, because we have a lot of decisions to make on, IR spots and stuff like that, and how a commissioner is gonna go through this, because you just start talking to people about it, and there's skepticism about the NFL season. I 100% think there's going to be a season. Now, is it a full season? I don't know. But regardless of that, like, there's going to be a lot of things here that is going to make things very interesting this year, which again further makes me feel like the zero RB is the strategy for me. But I'm always the contrarian.
Fantasy Wrath, just doing Fantasy Wrath things. So guys, again, jump in, let us know what, if you're going to go with the strategy, let us know which one you like. Rate, review, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff for us. We really appreciate all the support, and be sure to keep your eyes on fresh content dropping soon. See you guys.